today? On this UTV is July 21st of no rain. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome to our online audience. I always forget that, but you're just as important. Thank you so much for watching, whether you're watching now or watching later, and welcome to everybody here. So I want to spend some time today talking about choices. Moving forward, staying where we are, how we discern the best path to take when we are at a crossroads. I'll say the first question is, when are we at a crossroads? And the question is usually most of the time. So these are some of the things I want you to think about today. And I'm going to do something a little unusual because I don't usually do this, but I'm going to talk about a movie. Okay. I have a reputation among friends and family and those who know me for being extraordinarily loyal to movies that I like. Another way of saying that Another way of saying that is that I watch them a lot. That was my sister, for the purpose of for the online audience who's now rolling on the floor. I watch them a lot. I think I have some sort of indoor world record for the number of times I've watched Peter Jackson's trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. Who here has seen that? A lot of people. Okay, who's read the books? Okay, good, even better. Books, movies, excellent. These movies are based on J.R.R. Tolkien's novels of the same name, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. You may know the story of the faithful hobbits and men and elves and dwarves who dwell in Middle-earth, and now we know where Middle-earth is. Where is it? It's in New Zealand.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Who set off to rid the world of a spreading evil, a malignancy that threatens to overwhelm it. It's a great tale, full of high adventure and drama and courage and risk and danger. So this evil can only be overcome by the destruction of a ring, the One Ring, the source of power of the evil Sauron, who is depicted in the movie and maybe in the book, I don't remember, as a single burning, rotating eye at the top of a tower. This ring must be carried into Sauron's lair in the land of Mordor, which is a place just as grim as it sounds, and must be thrown into the fiery volcano of Mount Doom, which is also a place just as grim as it sounds. Because strength is not always measured in size or in muscle, the being that is fated to carry out this mission is the young hobbit Frodo Baggins, to whom the ring has come through a series of unusual circumstances, which I won't talk about because I have 20 minutes. He has no skill or experience in battle or hardship or anything difficult. He's half as tall or as strong as any given human being, and he has no idea where Mordor is or how to get there. Okay, these are bad things, but he volunteers nonetheless. So in the beginning of this tale, we see Frodo with his little backpack and his ring setting off from his home in the Shire, which is a place just as lovely as it sounds, accompanied by another hobbit, Samwise Gamgee. Sam, as he's called, has as little experience as Frodo does in the skills he's going to ostensibly need for this horrific suicide mission. Prior to setting off to rid the world of this growing, spreading, horrible malignancy, Sam had worked as a gardener. This is not a skill set that goes to success in what he's embarking on. They're an unlikely pair. We can see Joseph Campbell lovers picking up their ears as this incredibly lopsided hero's journey begins. So as Frodo and Sam are leaving the Shire, they're walking through this beautiful green field lit with warm sun, their little backpacks on, and Sam just stops. He just stops and he says, "This is it." And Frodo responds, "This is what?" And Sam says, "If I take one more step, I'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been." And he just stops. Haven't we all faced moments like that? If I take one more step, there's no going back. If I take this next step, I'm leaving all that I know, all that is safe, all that is familiar. Do I go or do I stay? Do I turn back? We have all faced such a crossroads. We face them all the time. And such a choice. The next step, if I take it, will bring me to places I have never been. Now, blockbuster movies are made of these amazing moments with high drama and enormous consequences. This is a little bit of a spoiler Frodo does not say, oh my God, you're right, and they turn around and go home.
They keep going.
That does not, yes, Catherine, you're right. They keep going. If they had reconsidered and turned around and went back to the Shire and back to their gardens, I guess I would be talking about someone and something else. But they go on, and there's more about that a little later. The movie is about what happens when they step out. What happens when they go into the unknown, when they just don't know what's coming, but they just say yes. This question, do I stay or do I go, do I turn back, can surround any circumstance, any new challenge we face. It doesn't have to be as monumental as ridding the world of a giant rotating burning eye. It seldom is. We can come up against this choice when we consider a new job, we begin a new relationship, we think about having or adopting children, or we take a leap into a new business. Anything. It can be wonderful, it can be scary, and it's often both. It's also a choice we face when change comes not from a choice we make. When life just, and I know this has happened to all of us, shoves us out of our boat, right? This happens so often you think it'd be really good at anticipating it, but we never are. It's always a big shock. It's a blam, there we are, we're in the boat, and we're kind of bobbing around in the water, wondering what happened and why we're all wet. You would think we would be better at knowing this is going to happen, but we're not. Life shakes us up. And crossroads are always looming out of the mist, which really is the future. We remember the story of Abraham in the Hebrew Scriptures, or at that point Abram, who's 75 years old. He's living in Mesopotamia as a sheep herder, and what is he essentially doing? He's minding his own business. He's not a patriarch at this point. He's just Abram, minding the sheep or the camels or the goats or whatever one does. He is one day visited by God, who tells him to leave his native land and his father's house and go to a place God will show him. This was probably an odd day for him, as it would be for many of us. Now, the fact that he's heading into the great unknown is somewhat ameliorated by the fact that it was God who showed up and told him to go. We should all be so lucky. This does not often happen. Instead of the voice of God, what are we going to hear? We're going to hear a small internal voice whispering to us that gets louder and louder and louder. We can experience what we call divine discontent, right? Telling us we need to get up and move. However, these voices or feelings, they're not enough to assure us that the choices we make are correct. They're enough to kind of get us to move, but they're not enough to give us the certainty that we know what we're going to pick is going to work out. We have to decide anyway. We have to do something anyway. Go forward, go back. Pick a road. So the question I want to talk about today is, how do we do that? I want to think about this choice in two ways, and both involve gaining clarity, which is a great word. One is about how we think about ourselves and our world, and the other is how we apply that clarity to choosing a path. Okay. One of the blogs I get that I really like, one thing we do here at One World is we talk about ancient wisdom, we also talk about new wisdom, and I really don't discriminate. My theory is whoever has said something useful to any of us, let's talk about it. Because I don't think Revelation is closed. I don't think guidance on how we live a full and productive and happy life is closed. So I'm going to talk about a guy named Seth Godin. Who has heard of Seth Godin? He is a blogger, okay, one guy. He's a teacher, he's a business executive. He writes a daily short blog, and it's really on business, but it bleeds into life, on his thoughts on living and working creatively and productively. If you haven't read his blog, I recommend it. One of his recent blogs was on the many ways in our daily lives we make the decision to move forward in confidence and strength and hope, or to sit back in fear. You may recognize yourself in some of these choices. This is what he writes. Today, will you stand outside your boss's office hoping that she'll meet with you about your new project, or will you hunker down in your cubicle hoping she won't notice you? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Will you raise your hand in class hoping to get some airtime, or will you sit in the back avoiding it? Okay, I'm going to raise my hand on that one too. Will you track down a recalcitrant customer and see if you can make things better, or will you duck voicemail in case they're trying to track you down? I see some faces. It's possible to spend your entire day moving towards something you seek. Alternatively, you can spend your time running away. I'm thinking this sounds familiar to some of us. So does Sam take that step, or does he turn around and go home to his garden? Only we can decide for ourselves, and it's an individual decision, how we move forward given life's opportunities and choices. Which do we choose? Do we respond with fear, or do we respond with confidence and hope? And why? Why do we make these choices? What prompts us to make these choices? So a few years ago, I and several others from One World took a coaching course from a master coach, Dr. Maria Nemeth. She's the author of several excellent books, and she's also the founding director of the Academy for Coaching Excellence. It was like a 3-day course, and it was very, very useful. I have forgotten most of it. But one, I guess it wasn't that useful. But one of the constructs I took away is a model she calls our basic assumption. And I want to share that with you for a little bit because I think this is a truth that some of us have. She teaches that we each have a basic assumption about ourselves and how we operate in the world. And it impacts our lives in ways that we cannot even imagine. This is a very useful way to think about how we think about ourselves. Dr. Nemeth defines our basic assumption as a fundamental decision you make about life when you're very young, a core conversation about yourself, others, and how life is. Just be open to this notion for a minute and just consider this. We typically learn and internalize our basic assumption by the time we're 4 or 5. As she writes, over the years, your basic assumption becomes so ubiquitous that it disappears into the fabric of your life. That's very sneaky. It becomes a part of your operating system, and you don't even know it. Maybe it's like malware that gets in there. Okay, when you're giving a talk, that's a plank you don't go down. It's like, how do I get back from that? But maybe that might be what it is. It sneaks into the way you think about yourself. We make this decision about ourselves with all the sophistication of a 5-year-old. And we live it for the rest of our lives without even knowing. It's governing our choices and our responses to a profound degree. It's a filter, the way we think about ourselves. Some believe it comes through an emotionally charged event when we're young. And the conclusion we reach, our assumption about ourselves, is the only way that we, as 5-year-olds, know how to organize what has happened. Because when we're 5, we're not good at that. We've all heard about children of divorce, right? And how many of them think it's their fault. It's not, but that's the only sense they can make of it. Our basic assumption gets wired into our brains the same way, because when we're kids, it's all about us. So whatever happens in our lives, we turn that into something about us. Author Marlene Cameron has given an example of how a child might internalize a basic assumption. The example she uses is when we disappoint our parents at a young age. Again, I won't ask for a show of hands, but who hasn't done that? All right, this is something we all live through as kids. So, you've disappointed your parents. You observe, my parents are disappointed. That is likely true. You interpret, I disappointed my parents. That is probably also true. You extrapolate, I am the disappointment. This is when you start walking a field. You generalize, I disappoint people. And that's the lesson you take. The truth is, no, you disappointed them on Thursday at 3 o'clock. That's all that means. It doesn't mean you're going to disappoint every significant person in the rest of your life for the next 50 years. But that's what we walk around with. Why? Because I disappoint people. I know that about myself. These filters, they're like lenses in your glasses or in your contacts. They take the world and they change the way you see it. Instead, they're like reverse lenses because they take what could be clear and they make it less clear. They give you a funhouse effect of your world and how you operate in your world, who you are, what you can do, how you relate to others. When we deal with uncertainty, when we are at a crossroads, we do ourselves a disservice by looking at the world and looking at our choices through the lenses of these old assumptions. This is where awareness comes in. This is why we talk about awareness so much and mindfulness. We need to know what we are telling ourselves about ourselves. The crossroads is not a place for fear and limits, but an opportunity for hope, courage, and creativity. So how do you find out if you carry such assumptions? How do we find out anything about ourselves? We listen. Listen to what we say about ourselves, what we call self-talk. When a choice comes up, What do you tell yourself about yourself? I can't do that. I don't know enough to handle that. Someone else can do it better. People don't value me. I'm not lovable. That's just not me. Listen to what you tell yourself about yourself. What do these judgments tell you that you think about yourself? It's important to listen to those things. Listen and see what you're telling yourself about you, about what you can do, about the impact you can have, about how the world regards you. And ask yourself whether it liberates you for your greatest creativity or whether it limits you. These are important questions. So remember last week we talked about what our true nature is and how we have to dig underneath the stuff we put on top to find out who we truly are. We explored that our feelings are not us. Our fears are not us. In the same way, our basic assumption is not us. They do not reflect the truth of who we are. They can hold us back. They can induce us to stay quiet when life is inviting us to stand up, to be counted, to be seen and heard. We truly bring our gift to the world when we have this clarity, which we can give ourselves through this awareness, through this asking ourselves, what am I saying about myself? What does that mean? What does that tell me about how I regard myself? To successfully navigate the choices before us, to live with this clarity, we need to ask these questions to enable ourselves to choose growth over fear. Author Catherine Butler Hathaway put it this way, many years ago. I invented this rule for myself to be applied to every decision I might have to make in the future. I would sort out all the arguments and see which belonged to fear and which to creativeness. And other things being equal, I would make the decision that had the largest number of creative reasons on its side. I think it must be a rule something like this that makes jonquils and crocuses come pushing through the mud. They don't know what's going to happen. They just push up. We can choose creativity over fear. So what does that look like? And how do we do it? Okay. So I have decided that you can tell a lot about people by two things. One is their homepage on their phone, and the other is their computer screensaver. That is a subject for another talk, the homepage on the phone. Quick teaser, mine is my dog. Don't go there. Can I have the clicker real quick? Okay. This is my computer screensaver. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so what is that? This is a picture that I took at Henry Park here in Roswell. It's absolutely beautiful. There's trees and there's a path. However, you see that the path, I love okay. You see that the path ends and it turns a corner. And we can't see where it's going. That is the beauty of this picture for me. That is what we in theater call the focus. It draws me. It's a risk. It's a combination of risk and beauty, right? It's kind of like life, the yin and the yang. It's beautiful, but I don't know where that is going. But it's calling me to go there. This picture tells me that every time I look at it, that we live in a world that is uncertain. We think we see an outcome, we think we know an outcome, we think we know what's going to happen, but we don't. What's the old Yiddish proverb that says, we plan and God laughs? Right? Our plans are aspirational. If somebody says, see you tomorrow, I always go, well, God willing and the creek don't rise. Hey, the creek might rise. Our plans are just aspirational. Any image we have of the future is like that path, like what's beyond that path. It's a construct of hope, intuition, maybe life experience. I have come to learn, at least for me, that what I need is not so much the ability to plan better or see the future better, because that's entirely out of the question, as I need the ability to navigate and live with the truth that I just don't know how my choices are going to turn out. I don't know what's around that corner. I just don't. I can guess because I can look at the past so far, but I just don't know. I have to be okay with that. It's the energy of surrender and of release, and at the same time, faith, which is a word we don't use a lot. But faith is the belief that something is holding you up. Something is with you as you go around that corner. That, to me, is that energy of peace and knowing. If I believe that God is all, and it's all God, then that includes me and my life's path, even if I don't know what's around that bend. The clarity we can gain about ourselves does not change this truth. Instead, it gives us the grounding to navigate this uncertainty, to turn that corner with equanimity and balance and peace and awareness. Author Joanna Macy once asked, if we could take a pill that would let us know how everything turned out, would that draw from us our greatest creativity and courage? Would we take that pill? What's the answer to that? The answer is no. Our creativity and our courage arise in the not knowing and in the exploration of where our vision and our gifts are going to take us anyway. That's the choice we face at the crossroads, even not knowing what's behind every path. Which way to go, even though we don't know. To go on or to turn back and go home to our gardens. We are always striking out on paths that turn that corner. Where do we find the courage to go on, accepting that we do not know what's going to happen as we walk on? So what does some ancient wisdom teach us? In Jeremiah 6:16, the prophet writes, this is what the Lord says, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Don Juan, in his teachings to Carlos Castaneda, put it another way. He wrote, look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. Then ask yourself and yourself alone one question. This question is one that only a very old man asks. My benefactor told me about it once when I was young, and my blood was too vigorous to understand it. I understand it now. I will tell you what it is. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. For me, that is the principle that helps me decide. It's not what's going to make me money, what's going to make me famous, what's going to make me popular. The path worth taking is the one with heart, and we can decide that every choice. It's the one that nourishes, that uplifts, that betters us, that betters each other. It makes our world better. We see this truth every day. We've talked about people who walk those paths, who make our world better and inspire us in the doing. Dr. King, we've talked about the choices he made. Talk about being at a crossroads. Am I going to remain the minister of this church, or am I going to step out and make a difference in the world, knowing what I know to be true? Peace Pilgrim, we've talked about her. Remember the talk about her? This lady who stuck a sign on her back saying Peace Pilgrim and spent the next 27 years walking back and forth across the United States, bringing a message of peace. Dr. Tom Katana, who works in the Nuba Mountains in the Sudan as the only surgeon for a population of over 500,000 impoverished souls. Those people were at a crossroads. And they had to decide, do I go on or do I go back? Do I walk a path of fear or do I walk a path with heart? So let's go back to Frodo and Sam. They succeed in the end, despite many dangers and much uncertainty. They succeed in the end because they had at the end all the skills they needed, even if they didn't know one end of a sword from the other. As it turned out, that wasn't really the skill set that mattered. They had courage and perseverance and love and faith that they were standing for the good, no matter the risk. When others said they couldn't do it, they didn't listen. Even if by all accounts those who said it were probably right when you looked at all the facts. When they thought they couldn't do it, something kept them going. At every choice point, at every crossroads, at every turn, they made the decision for life, for courage, for hope, and they kept going. They continued to walk the path with heart, and it took them through whatever darkness they encountered. I've heard it said that any path that leads us to greater compassion, love, and service is a holy one. whatever God you look at and whatever name you call it. And any path leading to separation and division and judgment is not. As Karen Armstrong teaches, religion is not what you believe, but what you become. It's these choices that take us into becoming who we truly are, that take us into becoming the light that we are. We can each find our own path with heart by continuing to stand at the crossroads with courage and ask, which way is the good?
All right.